Well, moms, it's your day. You get stuff today, don't you? Anybody get any stuff so far? Anybody get a card? Anybody wake up to breakfast in bed? Anybody get chocolates or flowers this morning? Yeah, some of you. Are any of you going to go out to eat after church? No. No. Yeah, oh, you are, okay. How many of you are going to be blessed because your spouse or your kids are going to grill out for you so that all you have to do is make the side, set the table, clean the table, and do the dishes? Yeah? Well, on behalf of all the men in your life, you're welcome. Right? Here's the thing. I may be wrong. I don't think so, though. After many years of watching Mother's Days come and go, talking to my own mom and talking to my wife, here's what I think. I think one of, not necessarily the, but I think it's one of the top things that moms want more than anything else for Mother's Day is they want their children to know Jesus. They do. And here's the other thing. Not only do they want their kids to know Jesus, they want their kids, their siblings, to get along. They want the children to get along. I know that's true for our family. So when my son Sawyer was at the Naval Academy, we paid for the two oldest, Pearson and Maddie, to go out. We paid for their flights. We got them what's it called? Airbnb. And my son, when he had leave, would come and spend time because it's important for the parents to know the kids care for one another. When they all came back in January or February, there were two infants, so we called in reinforcements, and the Evans came and helped us babysit. And we sent all the kids off for a morning just to spend time together. Because my mom used to sit there and she would say, it's important to me that, first of all the kids found their place in life, that they're not just surviving, they're thriving. But it's also important that you all get along. Because when the storms of life come, it's nice to have siblings that you can lean on and converse with. Yes, you have your immediate family, but you also have each other. And that's part of the legacy that your parents give you. So here's what I want us to do this morning. I want us just to meander through a family in the Bible. Abraham had a son named Isaac. Isaac was married to Rebekah. They had two sons, Esau and Jacob. They were twins. Jacob later becomes known as Israel. And I want to just reflect on that story. And I want to grab just two or three observations, and then I want to think a little bit about Mother's Day. And then you've been so faithful. The last few weeks have been busy weeks. I want to get you out on time so that you can beat the Lutherans to the restaurants. All right? Can we do that? All right. But we're going to start in Genesis. And when the time came to give birth, Rebekah discovered that she indeed had twins. The first one was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat, so they named him Esau. Do you know what Esau means in Hebrew? Hairy. No, it does. In real life, it does. It's hairy. Not Harry, but Hairy. All right. Then the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so they named him Jacob, which means to follow or to supplant. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. So here's the deal. They're setting the picture. They have twins being born, and you have Jacob grabbing Esau's heel and trying to pull him back into the womb. Why? Because in that culture, the firstborn male is the heir apparent. They get 2/3 of the inheritance. And although that sounds impressive, it also comes with a lot of responsibility. They're in charge of mom and dad. Their script has been written for them. They don't get to run off and follow their dreams. Their dreams are now what their mom's and dad's dreams. They're passed on the lineage from one family to the next. They now have to do and keep that movement going that was handed down to them. Now, here's what many scholars believe. In fact, I'd say almost most scholars believe. The story of Esau and Jacob is the Old Testament foundation story of what Jesus uses for the prodigal son. When Jesus is preaching the prodigal son, he's modernizing the story of Esau and Jacob. And if you want to have some fun, read it and you'll see the similarities as they go through. But regardless of how it came about, here's the one thing we need to understand, and that is this family is a mess. This family has some issues going on with it, and because of that, you have Isaac beginning to favor Esau because he hunts and does what Isaac considers manly things. Rebekah begins to favor Jacob because he's sweet, smart, sensitive, and intuitive with his emotions. So let me pause. We have 3 children in our household, Pearson, Maddie, and Sawyer, and they all 3 have distinct personalities, and they all have uniqueness. And I love all of their different personalities, and they all make me smile for different reasons, but I love them all the same. You love them all the same. So before we came to Racine 25, 26 years ago, Karen and I were family life pastors, which meant we did a ton of parenting classes, marriage classes, divorce recover, couples communication. And we did this in a large megachurch, church of 8,000, but we also did it, we would go and do seminars for people. And here's the one thing that all research tells you. If you are a dad and you are a mom, if you're parents and you come together, you need to be aligned if you're going to have children. Otherwise, the typical thing that happens is the man gets pushed out of the picture and feels relegated to the sideline. And mom begins to parent, and mom then becomes friends with the kids too soon. And you're friends with your kids when you should be parenting your kids. You could be friends with your kids when they get into high school, college, but when they're young, they have enough friends, they need parenting. They need someone to guide them and to parent them. If you don't do that, what happens is you get child-centered parenting. Have you ever been around a family where the child runs wild? And not only does the child run wild, they're rude and they're obnoxious. And you look at the parents and the parents go, what are you going to do? They're kids. Well, you're going to parent. That's what you're going to do. You're going to parent and you're going to discipline, and you're going to discipline your children, and you're going to help grow them up in a godly way. So here's the deal. If you're a young family here and you've got a child 2, 3, 4 years of age, I challenge you to do this today. Go stand in the middle of a room. Mom and dad just start to hug. Do you know what that child's going to do? He's going to come and he's going to try to wiggle in between you two, and he's going to push and say, my mommy, my daddy. And you're going to pick that child up and smile and set him over here and say, no. This has to be firm. Now you're invited into the family. And you're going to remind that child that they're part of something bigger than just yourself. If you don't, we'll be talking when you have kids in high school. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman, but Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay at home. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating the wild game that Esau brought home, but Rebekah loved Jacob. One day when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home from the wilderness exhausted and hungry. And Esau said to Jacob, I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew. And this is how Esau got his other name, Edom, which means red. So when you're reading the scriptures about the Edomites, that's Esau's lineage. All right, Jacob replied, but trade me your rights as the firstborn son. Look, I'm dying of starvation, said Esau. What good is my birthright to me now? But Jacob said, well, first you must swear that your birthright is mine. So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all of his rights as the firstborn to his brother Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate the meal, then he got up and left. He showed contempt for his rights as the firstborn. All right, 3 quick observations. First one, often unsatisfied appetites lead to exaggerated emotions. Did you get that? Say that to yourself quietly for a second. Just let that soak. Because here's a spiritual truth. We all have appetites and we all have desires. There's not anyone who doesn't have an appetite or desire. How you satisfy those appetites and desires determines how balanced you are. Did you get that? So I have 3 children. All 3 of our children, I made sure every day they heard, I love you. Not, I love you, but sit down, look me in the eye and say, you know I love you, right? You know you have value and worth that's bigger than just being my son or daughter. You should love yourself and have value and worth in who you are. I wanted them to know that because here's a truth, and almost all of us have experienced this. When you get in junior high and high school, some of those appetites begin to surface. Some of those desires begin to surface. And I didn't want the first time my daughter heard kind words in the back seat of a car. I wanted her to have such good self-esteem she would look at those young men and say, no, I know who I am. I don't need that. I wanted my sons to know before those girls start batting their eyes and trying to wrap them around their fingers, whoa, Nellie, no, we're not going to do that. And so we do that, but we do it with more than just physicality. Listen, there's truth to it, right? So I used to tell my children, I want you to study. Why? So you get a good ACT score. So you can get accepted to a good college or vocational school or apprentice or military. But here's the thing, that's not what's going to define you. That's not your self-worth. Parents, we've got to be careful because if they think that's their self-worth, they're going to have issues and stressed out. I want you to get a good job. I want you to have a closet full of nice clothes and buy a nice car. But that doesn't define you because here's what happens. If we put so much pressure on those appetites and desires, then they think that that's what makes them have self-worth. And if they don't have a nice car, they don't think they have self-worth. Or even worse yet, they begin to look at their neighbors and say, oh, they don't have a nice car. And they begin to look down on them. And they quit loving people as they're supposed to. See, here's our thought. The thought is the stomach of your soul will stop growling once you get that appetite, once you get that desire cared for. Can I tell you something? You will always have an appetite. You will always have a desire. Even as followers of Jesus. You just stay close enough to Jesus so that you don't follow in the Paul's pattern of, why do I do the very thing I know I shouldn't do, but I always do it? You stay close to Jesus so your appetites and desires are balanced and in line with who Jesus is. Second observation. They got what they wanted, but not what they needed. What Jacob wanted was the birthright. He got that. But if you study the life of Jacob all throughout the rest of the scriptures, what you'll find is a man searching to belong. He's trying to find a place of belonging. Where's my tribe? Where's the place that I belong? Esau got what he wanted, stew. He got his stomach full. He didn't get what he needed, and that's to be the head of the household. And not just being a manly man who knows how to protect and hunt, but also one that's sensitive, that knows how to pull out the best in everybody in his family. They didn't get that. Up in the northeast corner of the United States is an ice cream shop called Friendly's Ice Cream. Anybody ever have Friendly's Ice Cream before? Yeah? It's down, I was introduced to it down in Maryland when my son was at school. So the 2 brothers started in high school, and they had more success than they ever thought they would. They have what's called generational wealth. You know that term? It means they have so much money, there's no way they can spend it in their lifetime, and there's probably no way their children can spend it in their lifetime, and it'll go down to their grandchildren. And then they got to a point where somebody had a want, not a need, and they began to bicker over it. For 85 years, they were doing really good, and now the 2 of the men cannot get together unless in the same room unless a lawyer is present. And Priestley, Blake, who's age 92, said, I'm very disappointed. He was my best friend for 85 years. It would have been a nice story if we ended up best friends for our entire life. But somebody had a want that wedged in. Wasn't a need, but it was a desire. It was an appetite. We don't know exactly what it was, but it ruined that whole relationship. Third observation. Don't give up what you want most for what you want now. So, this is a picture, and it's a very famous picture during Vietnam. Anybody remember this picture? Yeah. She was known as the Napalm Gal. Lim Fook. Lim Fook. Her village was bombed with napalm. She had 65% of her body was falling off her skin. She had to have 17 surgeries, 14 months in the hospital, then a couple of Christian missionaries from America. They adopted her, and now, to this day, if you go look her up online, she's an evangelist. She goes from church to church sharing the love of Christ Jesus. But at that time, she was so angry, and who would blame her? She writes this: "The anger inside me was as hatred as high as a mountain." I love this next line. "And my bitterness was as black as old coffee. I hated my life. I hated all the people who were normal because I was not normal. I wanted to die many times. Doctors helped heal my wounds, but they couldn't heal my heart. Then, through a better understanding of John 3:16, listen to this, I came to realize that I could not change the history of what happened to me, but I could change the meaning of it." So the last time that Jacob is talking to Esau, Esau looks at him and says, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you for duping me and duping Dad." And he looks at his mom and she says, "You should probably leave." And so he does. Now, after searching and searching, he finally gets married. He has 2 sisters, and all of these things happen, and he marries these 2 sisters, and the family gets big, and now he has his own tribe and his own people. They're so big they have to find a place to belong, and the only land that's available is right next to Esau. So he sends someone to go talk to Esau to say, "Hey, can I come home?" And Esau says yes, but Esau's a warrior, so he doesn't know what to think. So the day before he sees Esau, he goes off by himself and he goes to sleep. And while he's sleeping, an angel of the Lord comes down and he wrestles with God. And they wrestle all night long, and to the point where he wakes up, he has a bad hip and he has to limp, which is just a reminder that he's not God. He serves God, he's not God. But God blessed him and he changes his name from Jacob to Israel. Now, a lot of times we say this in this church: this is a safe place to wrestle with God. What do we mean? Here's what we mean. You don't have to clean yourself up to come to church. Come just as you are. But we expect that if you're sincere, you and God will start wrestling. And you might even start limping a little bit, realizing that you're not God and God is God. And at some point in time, your name will be changed, which is a fancy way of simply saying you'll realize that you're not the Lord of your life. Jesus is the Lord of your life. And Jesus' ways and attitudes and thoughts will begin to change your ways, thoughts, and attitudes. And so he wakes up. And the next day he gets ready, and we pick it up in Genesis chapter 33. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 maidservants. He put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, Rachel and Joseph in the rear. And then he himself went out ahead of everybody, and he bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. 7 times. Remember that word 7 means complete. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and he kissed him, and they wept. Reconciliation happened. What started got changed. How did it get changed? Scholars say that wrestling with God is an image for us to remind ourselves that before we can be healthy in this relationship, we need to know our identity in this relationship. And once we get comfortable with who God is in our life and what he's doing in our life, then we can really be loving, caring, kind, and be gentle in our transformation with how we love our siblings. How many of you have ever heard of this book, Love You Forever? Anybody? Yeah, people either love this book or they hate this book because it gets a bit creepy in the middle. I think that once you find out the meaning of this book and the background, you do pretty good with it. So this is Robert Munch. He's the one that wrote the book. When he was a senior in high school, he was finally diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But he had it all his life. They just didn't diagnose it. But by then, he was self-medicating himself with alcohol. So then he went to college, and he was a full-blown alcoholic, and he was going to AA just to survive and wake up in the morning and find meaning in life. He decided that AA was drawing him closer to Jesus. So after college, he decided he was going to be a priest, so he went to seminary. He didn't become a priest, but he did get a degree in anthropology in seminary. And he came out, and one of the reasons he didn't become a priest, even though he loved Jesus, is he loved kids, and he seems to relate to kids, and kids seem to get him because, after all, he's just a big kid in a grown-up body. And so he got married, and he and his wife were going to have kids. And so they got pregnant, and then she gave birth to a stillborn baby. And then they tried again, and she got pregnant, and she gave birth to a stillborn baby a second time. And then she got pregnant no more. And he was trying to explain to her that they still have children, even though we can't hold them and don't have skin on. We still have kids. We have kids that are just up in heaven. And we can be surrogate parents, and we can be spiritual parents. And so he wrote a poem for his wife. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. But it had a double entendre. Because once he got her calm, he said, listen, I also say to my girls, I love you forever, I like you for always, and as long as I'm living, you may not be here on this earth, but you'll always be in my memory. You'll always be my baby. And so he began to draw pictures, and some friends saw the pictures and said, you should put a book together. And so he wrote this book, and he said a mother held her new baby and rocked slowly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and while she held him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And then he grows. And as he grows, she keeps her eye on him. Now, it gets a little creepy here, right? Because in the book, she crawls across from the bottom and stares at him, and we're not going to do that. But the point he's trying to get across is that when you have children, they're always on your mind. Even when they grow up, when you see them, they're still your little baby. And then it gets a little creepier. In the book, she's got a station wagon with a ladder on it, and she climbs up to see her boy. Now, this is a true picture from the book. This is somebody that thinks it's a little creepy, and they wrote this. And the son said, I love you forever, I like you for always, but what's going on here isn't working for me. Well, it's just a simple way of simply saying there's got to be boundaries somewhere, Mom, right? But what he was trying to get across was this, and I've done it, and maybe you've done it. I have my baby, I watch him grow up, and I'm always keeping my eye on him, and then they're out of the house, and it's almost worse because now I can't control them. Now I can't interact with them. Now they have to make decisions. I have to let them fail forward. But no matter what's going on, I'm always parenting. You never parent. Don't ever let me hear you say in my presence, well, they're 18, they're on their own. They're never on their own. When they're out there, you should be on your knees praying for them, exhorting them, loving them, caring for them. Yes, they're growing up and they're independent. And they're going to make their own choices. And sometimes they're not going to be good choices. And there's nothing you can do about that but continue to pray. But you never stop parenting. Just like you never stop being a mother or a father. I don't know about you, but I do this sometimes when the kids are out of the house. Our bedroom is at the very top of the stairs, so I'll get to the top of the stairs, and rather than going into the bedroom, I'll look down the hall, and I'll just meander down the hall, and I'll stand in the doorway, and I'll just look in the room, and all the memories will flood back of tucking them in at night or having deep conversations. And I'll just thank God right there how blessed I was. So the book continues. The creepiness subsides. Well, that mother, she got older. She got older and older and older. And one day she called up her son and said, you'd better come and see me because I'm very old and I'm very sick. So her son came to see her. And when he came in the door, she tried to sing the song. She's saying, I love you forever. I'll like you for always. But she couldn't finish because she was too old. She was too sick. So the son went to his mother, and he picked her up and he rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and he sang this song. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. And then the son came home that night, and he stood for a long time atop the stairs. And then he went into the room where his very new baby daughter was sleeping. And he picked her up in his arms, and very slowly he rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked her, he sang, I love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Because what he was trying to explain to people is this. Moms and dads are pouring into you so that you can stand on their shoulders and see further. But your spiritual life is something that you'll have to spend time on because you have more time with your kids than churches ever will. If I can just pour that spiritual life into you as well, so that you will then pour it into your children. In fact, he says this, he says, I could write a story better than life. In the story, love would become stronger than death. Yes, I've lost little girls. No, they're not with me here on this earth, but that doesn't mean we stop being parents or spiritual parents. And so we'll do the best we can to continue to pour into young people. But what I would tell Robert is I think the reason you can think that way is because there was already a story written that was better than life. And in that story, love did become stronger than death. And his name is Jesus. And he walked this earth, and he was a very real person, and he was resurrected. And people smarter than me have gone through and tried to figure out what all the options are, and they always come back. Whenever they're searching, they come back and they say, I don't exactly understand it. The most logical explanation is he was resurrected from the dead. And by the way, we have testimony of 500 people in the scriptures that say, and we saw him and we talked to him. So on this Mother's Day, may I just simply remind you, moms, don't give up. You've done the best you can. Just keep doing the best you can. Children, you've been given a gift called a mom. Make sure that you look her in the eye and remind her how appreciative you are. And I know it's hard, I know it's silly, and it's, but do it. Do it. And let us always remember that Christ Jesus' grace and power and mercy is there knitting us together as a family. And God's people said,